Welcome to The Race, a podcast brought to you by FCA Endurance, where our goal is to unite, equip, and encourage Christian endurance athletes in their mission to see the world changed for Christ. Join me as I interview FCA Endurance teammates to get their thoughts and ideas on how they run with endurance the race set before them. Maybe you want to start your own huddle, but don't know where to begin. Maybe you're a believer who wants to get in shape, run a 5K, maybe do your first sprint try for the first time. Or maybe you just want to see the world changed for Christ and want to join us in our kingdom building efforts as we press beyond evangelism and into discipleship. Well, we are here for you, and we hope to touch on all of these issues, questions, and more. And to help me do that for this episode, we have Linc Murdoch, who is a 3-time national champion in triathlon, duathlon. But Linc, you came from humble athletic beginnings based on what I've learned about you. How did you get involved in the sport? And welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Appreciate being on.
Yeah,
humble beginnings. I was that kid growing up that, tried hard, wanted to be an athlete, but really wasn't that great. Got cut from some teams, sat the bench a lot on some teams, did stupid things like dribbling inbounds from out of bounds in basketball instead of throwing the ball in. I tried hard. I went to a real small college, a little NAIA school. My senior year, the track team had about 6 guys out for the team. And so the coach said, why don't you come out and run? I didn't know what I was doing. And we went to Eastern Kentucky University, and I got lapped in a 2-mile on the track. So
it's hard to do.
You just got to be not very good to get lapped in 2 miles. I think it was probably the first time in the history of track and field that had ever happened. So, but every year I would watch the Hawaiian Ironman on TV, and I started running. That inauspicious track start. For some reason, I hung with it. 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathon, ultra marathon. I was kind of one of those guys that I wanted to see. Okay, I did that. I wonder if I could do this. So watching the Hawaiian Ironman, and then I actually met a triathlete, a guy that had actually done some races. So I had a million questions. So in 1994, I did my first race. It was kind of between a sprint and an Olympic distance, and set a goal the next year to go back, and had like 5 goals to hit this kind of time, to place in my age group, to not chauvinistic, but not to beat all the ladies, to just, 1994. So, and I came back and I hit all those goals a year later.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then it was the same thing though. Okay, can I do an Olympic? Can I do a half Ironman? Can I do an Ironman? So that's kind of
there are some fast ladies out there, Linc. There's no shame.
Listen, today getting chicked is a regular occurrence for me.
I didn't want to be the one to say it. I did not want to be the one to say it. Yeah. Well, I remember the first time it happened to me, and there was this girl. It was actually a 70.3, and she just walked away from me on the run, and there was nothing I can do. And I was in my 40s, so I just chalked it up to the heat or something. But every race after that, there were more and more people that were running past me, and it's a very humbling and not humiliating, but humbling experience to realize, okay. So you probably started out, at the 20 to, I can't remember what you said, 30 to 34 age group. So you go up, and then you start on the, I'm at 50, I'm in the 50 to 54 age group right now. And it's clear to me that things are not as easy as they once were. But I want to go back real quick too. So you were NAIA in Eastern Kentucky.
Kind of central Kentucky. I went to Asbury College, just south of Lexington.
Okay. My boys race. They race track and cross country at Cedarville University, which was
yeah.
So I don't know.
Right, if we did. We competed against them in soccer and some different sports. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Cool.
And it's what's great about those small schools, right? I mean, you can go as a walk-on. I did the same thing for soccer. Never played before in my life. Wanted to try it out, and that's that's kind of how we get to where we get to try things, right? And that's NAIA is a little more, it's more like it's D2 for people who don't know what NAIA is. It's very similar to, I think, what a D2 division would be in the NCAA.
Yeah.
But so that's great. So you were hitting all your marks. You now be a world champion. That's phenomenal. Are you still competing at those upper echelons?
Well, just one correction. I'm not a world champion. maybe when I'm in the 90 to 94 age group, that would be an
World, national, low, whatever.
well. So I've gone to World several times,
That's
and
great.
yeah, that's a whole. I mean, yeah, that's the real deal there. So I'm thankful. I mean, this is the glory to God. But three times I finished in the top 10 at
Wow.
IT, which I look back on that and think, man, how did I even do that? But yeah, I'm still trying to race at a pretty good level. After
Great.
about 15 years of committing to the short course stuff and doing really well. 2 years ago, I thought, I wonder what this old body can do going back maybe to the 70.3 distance. So I did that and had a good season last year, hit a couple podiums in a couple of those. So
Oh, phenomenal.
feeling blessed.
Is 70.3 your favorite discipline or distance?
It is. It is. Even though I've, 10 to 1, I've done sprints and Olympics compared to the long course stuff. But I love it because it combines a lot of strategy, right? I mean, you got to get your pacing just right. You got to get your nutrition right. You can't go crazy. So I love strategy. And for me, it's my favorite distance. Yeah, I think I've done 7 in the last 2 years.
Yeah,
So
phenomenal.
like you were saying, I'm in the 65 to 69 now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Big deal is just getting the training in without getting injured, especially the running.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And, the Lord bless me. My last training run, I raced the World Championship 70.3 last year in St. George. My
Oh, good for
last,
you.
my last training run, I had to get picked up at mile 4 a week and a half out with
Oh,
my wife coming by in the car to come get me.
no.
And I was just praying that it gets to get me through. And the Lord carried me through that race. It was a wonderful time. That's where I met Mark Long. And that's
Yeah.
how we kind of started. I started to get reacquainted with FCA Endurance as a ministry. And so, yeah, that kind of rebirthed my local huddle here as well. So
Yeah.
it was a really wonderful experience. And God's hand was certainly in that, not just to get me through the race, but to kind of get things going here too as well. Got me some ideas for the podcast, things of that nature. So that's really
Excellent.
cool. So yeah, so wonderful. Yeah, phenomenal that you've accomplished all that and still going strong. And I agree wholeheartedly with staying injury free, fitting everything in, and 70.3 being such a good distance for that because you don't have to go out and run a marathon. You're
Yeah.
still putting in some serious time and work.
Yeah.
And the rewards are good too because you got a 3 hour, 4 hour, 4.5 hour race ahead of you at some point. So I mean, it's more than like you do a sprint, you could be done in an hour, right?
Right.
Or you do a 5K and yeah, that whets your appetite. And the cool thing about 5K is you can do one every weekend. You can fit it anywhere.
Right.
So it's so much. So regardless of where you're at in your athletic endeavors, there's always going to be opportunities for you to compete. And if you're a competitive person like you or me,
Yeah.
there's opportunities to race and also opportunities to evangelize and things of that nature. But before we get into that, you
Yeah.
also have you are the CEO, I believe. You're gonna have to correct me probably. Executive director, perhaps, of a ministry called Step Up to Live, sounds really cool. And I got a little story to share after you talk a little bit about it. So, but tell us a little bit about that ministry and what your involvement is there.
Yeah. So we produce materials, resources for pastors, missionaries, ministry leaders, and followers of Jesus all over the world. We have a primary resource, primary tool. It's a little booklet called Step Up to Life. And so my dad, that long story short, that was my dad's sermon 66 years ago. He preached a sermon called Steps to Salvation. Little,
Wow.
oh, it would turn into a booklet that's been translated now into 80 different languages and versions. And we were guessing 3 to 4 million copies have gone out in the last 20 years all over the world. So that's crazy to even say those words because it seems so massive, and we're just a small ministry. But the Lord's taken that and blessed it and spread it all over the place. So basically, what it is it helps a person understand where they are in their spiritual journey. Jesus told a scribe in Mark 12, he said, "You're not far from the kingdom of heaven." And so that's distance terminology. So in these 5 steps, and people can look at those and go, oh, I'm on this step, and they can see where they are in their spiritual journey. And then ultimately what the next step is, and then where God wants them ultimately to land on the top step of saving faith. So Yeah, that's that in a very small nutshell. That's what we produce. That's what we use. We have a triathlon version and a runner's version, which is really cool because we've partnered with FCA, and I've been a part of FCA Endurance for a lot of years now, and it's just one of the resources that are available for Christians.
And we have handed out the little interesting little tidbit is we have actually handed out. I didn't know it was yours or your ministries, but we've handed out that at expos, at marathon expos, for under our FCA Endurance banner, not knowing that they were yours, but they're distributed through FCA or FCA Endurance. Yes. So that's really cool. And we have the runners version. I did not know there was a triathlon version as well, but they look. Yeah, I saw the links. I must have. I think I have an older version of the same thing, but it has the same inside or same backside, but the front's a little bit different. What you have showed me is a little more modernized, and we're not running in our old Nike Pegasus, which used to be funny to me, but now the pegs are really a popular shoe again. So, but yeah, no, so that's really cool. And we've used that. And I mean, he uses those. And obviously in this case, he really is using what you put together. Yeah. I mean, that's super great. And
one of the things we found, Andy, is that, and we're just, we're reading the researchers that are out there today, the George Barnas and these guys that are doing all the research. And in a nutshell, basically, only 1 out of 10 people that raise their hand in any kind of setting to make a decision for Jesus, only 1 out of 10 can be found anywhere just a short time later. And so one of the things we say is that we at Step Up Life, we want to produce lasting conversions, not temporary decisions. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between a temporary decision that doesn't last. It's a spurious type of decision and a true lasting conversion. So, the statistics are really bad. They're just really bad in terms of results of evangelism today. And so we're trying to dig into that and find out, okay, why is that? Why is 10%? And some say it's only 2 or 3%, but we'll benefit of the doubt. Let's say it's 10. That's still really bad. And what can we do to see lasting conversions take place? So
I agree.
Really the heartbeat of Step Up to Life.
Yeah, no, I think that's lacking in the Christian community right now. That's why I kind of focus as much on discipleship. Now, clearly, FCA Endurance is both, right? We are an evangelistic ministry outside of the 4 walls of the church, reaching out, looking for people who are looking for us, right? I mean, we can carry on conversations to the extent that people are welcoming, and that goes along with where they are in their walk. Are they resistant? Are they open? Where are they at? And that's all part of a conversation you can have. You can find that out what step they're on pretty darn quick. And I know that. And so I have friends that are still on that first step, but they have no interest at all. But they like me, I like them, and we have established a friendship. And there are other people, right, who they make a decision. Well, was it real? I mean, we have the parable of the soil, right? Was it real? Is it going to last? Yes. We need to go ahead. That's what the local huddles are all about. We need to cultivate those relationships, make sure that it takes, right? That it takes and move forward. And how do we do that? By discipling them. So I think that's where the local huddle is so important. And you're probably involved. I'm going to just guess here that you're probably involved in a local huddle as well. So clearly, and we haven't even talked about this, but your father's kind of started this ministry, wrote this little booklet. You've got a book written that as well. So it must run in the family, the gift of being able to write, that sort of a thing. You probably have other similar gifts with outreach and working with others. Has that kind of spilled over into the FCA and Endurance ministry? And are you currently active in a huddle now? How are things going for you there? And how did those originate?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of questions right there. So I was, when I got into endurance sports and running and all of that, I was interested in a sports ministry that, shared the same kind of heart. So in fact, way back when I first started, a couple years after I started running, I contacted Athletes in Action, and they had like a team, with the kits and everything. And I was like, oh man, that'd be so cool. So I wrote them and I said, hey, I can run 35 minutes for a 10K. I'd love to be on a team. And they wrote back and said, yeah, we're looking for guys that can run 31. I was like, oh, okay, so much for that. So a few years later then, I'm trying to think how it was, Chris Anderson and I met, and actually before Chris, we started this thing called the ICTN, the International Christian Triathlon Network.
That was you guys, huh? I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. The ICTN was the very first start of this whole thing. FCA came on a year or two later as part of that network. And then the Lord was kind of leading me another way. And so Chris said, look, why don't we could just make this an FCA thing. So FCA Endurance was kind of born out of that, I believe. Maybe it was already going and they merged in and then took over. I teased Chris about taking over what I started, but no, it's all good. So yeah, we had triathlon camps every year, and that ran for probably, gosh, I don't know, 15 years. They were in Phoenix initially, then in Tucson, and just great times, great camaraderie. We'd have Chris Lieto, Heather Galnick, some of these pros come in that were believers and be part of our camps. So that was great. And then Chris really got things rolling, and Mark's taken over and done a great job too with the huddles. So in Omaha, it's kind of a strange scene. Our touch point the last few years has been a Monday night ride. So it's a time trial. Everybody shows up. It's self-timed, and we give an award at the end to the most improved, not the fastest.
Nice.
You keep track, and we keep track of the results. And then if you're the most, you might be the slowest one, but if you're the most improved, you win the hair gel. Big deal, right? Or whatever it is that we're giving away. So at that point, we distribute the FCA brochure. We start with the word of prayer. So it's kind of a soft touch, an easy entry in. We have not had regular huddle meetings like most huddles, whether it's monthly or weekly. It's just time and leadership, and somebody to grab that and go with it here in Omaha. But at this point, that's not happening.
Understood.
It's a real deal story at this point.
Yeah. I really like both of those ideas. Number one, I was always curious as to why. Well, first of all, I wanted to get into those training camps. I thought that was a phenomenal idea. Cost prohibitive, time prohibitive. There's other issues that not everybody can make it clearly. But man, how cool. I think it was in Tucson the year I was trying to go. There was one that might have been, I think you said Florida. Maybe it wasn't Florida. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. There was.
I was trying to get there, and it just couldn't. It just was not happening for me, even though the price point was low. It was very reasonable. Do you think that there's a potential for those to be resurrected at some point?
There is talk going on about that with Mark and with some of us that were kind of core to that camp each year. So we're looking at some things. We'd love to do it. It comes down. It's a little bit time intensive, work intensive to pull that all together. Yeah. And we always had a committee, in the years past when we did it. But just invaluable. Lifelong relationships were built up during those camps, and riding up Mount Lemmon together and stuff like that there in Tucson. Fun. Amazing times. So
yeah, really cool. So yeah, we'll be praying for that, for wisdom on whether or not we can push forward with that opportunity, and whatever resources are required, if they fall in place, if the Lord wills. Clearly, that's something we can consider. I was going to touch on your Monday night rides are really cool, and if you're in a super saturated market, like we have a group ride that's non-FCA endurance. Every night of the week, you can find a group ride somewhere out of some local bike. And we're a small community, but there's some. It's not like we're going to invent a new ride and have people come to it, because I think that at least in this community, the goal is to ingrain ourselves into existing communities. We actually did try a Monday night mountain bike ride once, but Monday it was on the night of another ride, and it never really came to fruition. But you guys seem to have something pretty solid there. And is it sponsored by the local huddle, or is it's open to everybody regardless? I guess those are two questions. I don't want to hit you with too many questions, but tell me a little bit.
No. So it went probably 10 straight years.
Wow.
And it wasn't huge. We'd have anywhere from, just a very few up to maybe 13, 14. Every minute we go, it's an out and back course just on the edge of town where there's not much traffic. And we, a local bike shop was kind of our, how did I say it? They were our sponsor, and FCA was our host, or I use those two different words so people knew the bike shop, so they felt good about that. Maybe they didn't know what FCA was, but that's okay. They're going to come out and do the time trial. And then COVID hit, And the year before COVID, our numbers had dropped some, and then COVID shut it down for a couple of years. And then when I thought about last year, same issues you're facing, Andy, where
Mhm.
so many different tri teams, cycling teams, weekly rides. It felt like it had kind of lived its life.
Mhm.
And so now it's just like, well, where do we go from here? We'll have to see.
Right. And like, yeah. And so we have resources that make ourselves known without having to invent something new out of whole cloth. We have kits, cycling kits, running kits, we
Yeah.
have, wristbands. There are ways that people can identify us. Without in not so subtle ways, but also, so you'll know if there's somebody interested in the ministry right off the bat, they will probably comment on that. Or if they're not interested, then they won't. Regardless, you're getting a good ride in, you're getting a good run in, you're making friends, you're making acquaintances and opportunities for evangelism. And so, regardless of whether it's something that you start up or whether it's something that already exists, we encourage you to get involved with those opportunities. And like you said, it's relational, and it's about just getting out there and either doing something for the community or with the community. And that community is the endurance community, and be looking for somebody who's looking for you, and then just grow from there. So yeah, so that's really great. So for you personally, you are an ambassador of Christ's, and you are an endurance athlete. So what does it mean to be both of those, in terms of, racing and training for Christ?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. There's kind of two or three angles to look at it from. So the first would just be like a personal joy and fulfillment. Eric Liddell, Chariots of Fire. When I run, I feel His pleasure. And there's something there that I think God. It's not for everybody, obviously, but God created some folks with this love of pushing themselves. He created them with some speed or some endurance. And so I think when we train and race, it's actually like we are living out part of who God has created us to be. Is it a huge part? Is it supposed to take over our lives? No, of course not. You got to keep it in perspective. But there's a couple different things I do. So I was a pastor for many years. So when I wake up in the morning, there's two that I'll mention. I wake up in the morning, it's like, oh man, it's here. I feel like this is what I was born to do. One of them is preaching. If I'm scheduled to preach somewhere or speak somewhere, I love that. It's just like the bullseye of what God's called me to do. But another one is when I wake up and it's race morning. It's just, oh, I love these mornings. This is great. I don't mind getting up at 4 or whatever I have to do. So I think there's a personal thing that God's instilled in us. Obviously, there's individual personal pleasure that comes from that and fulfillment. But obviously, it's a platform. There's a bigger reason than just our own fulfillment, and that would be how can we use this gifting and this talent for the glory of God. And I tell people that a hobby or a Bible or a what's the right word? I can't think. Well, a hobby or a recreation is actually, here's how I define it. It's a God-given interest with evangelistic potential. So it doesn't matter if it's painting, gardening, hunting, whatever. If you got a real interest in that and you're good at that because God's gifted you, fulfilling, but you need to think beyond that and think, okay, how can this be used with with some evangelistic creativity?
Right.
So
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be praying for God to expand your boundaries, when you are good at what you do. And I think it's Psalms, somewhere in the Psalms, where it says, if you're good at your craft, you are going to be in front of kings. And
yes,
so if you're good, you're going to have a positive influence. If you're great, you're going to have an even greater influence because people are looking to you because you are an expert in your field, regardless of what that field is, whether it's gardening or what have you. And if you're
yes,
doing it in front of kings, that gives you such tremendous influence and witnessing power and capability that we make what we do, even if we're not pastors, our craft, and we get good at our craft. We as Christians should be at the best as we possibly can at what we do in order to draw others to us, in order to have influence with them, to lead them into the kingdom.
yeah. It's part of our stewardship, right? I mean, it's like if God's gifted you in some way, then well, if God's gifted me in a certain way, then it's my responsibility to become as good at that, to work at that, to develop that, to mature at that, because it's what I'll give an account for in the final days. We're all gifted differently, but what am I doing with the gifts God's given me? I want to become the best I can with whatever the gift is. So for me, yes, there's personal fulfillment. I've been racing, training, swimming, biking, running for 30 years now. And what's fun is when I do really well in a race or somebody finds out I've won a couple national championships or something, they're like, wow, they look at me and I'm old and they're like, wow, and so in our culture, athletic success gives you a platform. People will listen to you, they will respect you if you've accomplished a lot, especially athletically in our culture. So it's been really fun to see God help me. I've worked hard. His gifting is there, and then just his favor in some races where I know it was his favor and his grace and his kindness on me that day, because that result shouldn't have come based on my training, but it did. And like, I can't believe this. So he gives us success so that people will listen to us.
Yeah, glory to God, right? And I have a couple of comments about the age thing. So, number one, so I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and in France, they're talking about, they have a very liberal policy on retirement. I think it was like it used to be 60, but they're running low on resources. They need the workforce to work longer. Now they're trying to push it to 62, or maybe it's 63. I can't remember. Everybody in France is resisting, but as Christians, where there is no age of retirement, we are going to be working for him and for his kingdom until the day we die. That is how our outlook should be, because it's for his glory. And as you say, we can sometimes sit back and just look at God work and say, wow, that was amazing what he just did, right? And so that's really cool. And the other thing is about age, as I get older, I'm focused on the younger men in particular, like trying to like feed into them and figure out what we can do to help them be leaders in their household so that they can raise up the next generation. Because I'm looking, now that I get a little bit older, I have college kids, I'm going to have grandkids someday, Lord willing. I'm looking generations down the road. If the Lord tarries, then right. I want essentially his empire built in starting with me. What can I do to expand that? What advice do you have for younger generation, particularly younger men? Doesn't have to be anything athletic oriented per se, but just as a leader. That's my passion now. It seems to have shifted towards young men, young fathers. Do you have any advice for that younger generation?
Well, I think the world that we enjoy, endurance sports, there's a natural connection there with the younger guys if they're into that. Obviously, what you're saying is true across the board. Whoever's younger that the Lord brings into my life, I want to do the best I can to help, encourage, disciple, whatever. I love the natural connection with the sports endurance world. That's an easy one. But for younger guys, here's what I'd say. Life is harder than I thought it would be. I faced stuff. Our family has faced stuff in life, in ministry, in work, etc. That when I was 25 or 35, I never thought we'd face these things. And the world's getting crazier every day. So I would say, just go deep now, because you have no idea what the world's going to hold 10, 20, 30 years from now that you're going to face. As you're young now, but you're not always going to be young. So the roots better go down now, because when those storms come later, you're going to get blown off. And Andy, you and I both know guys and know gals that have just been blown completely off the course, and it's sad. So yeah, I would just say, let your roots go deep. What does that mean? Well, take advantage of every opportunity you can. Parachurch, FCA, local church, finding an older guy in the Lord that will walk with you through life. Maybe you meet with them, 2-3 times a month. Stay accountable. All of that's got to be in place, because the world's already crazy, but it's only going to get crazier.
Yeah, no, that's a sound advice. I love the analogy of putting your roots deep. I mean, there's a lot of biblical references to having a solid foundation. What can the righteous do without a solid foundation, right? Yeah. So that is truly 100% important. Linc, you are filled with wisdom. I love talking to you. I want to have you back and discuss some more things related to the kingdom and athletics. I hope you can join me again. Where now I know that you have a website, lincolnmurdoch.com, Lincoln, LINCOLNMURDOCH.com.
CH. Yes.
And you can find a lot there. You can find a lot also at Step Up to Life. And you can talk a little bit more about that in the remaining few seconds we have. And where else can people reach you? Are you on Strava too?
Yeah. Oh, I sort of, I hardly ever, but I think I'm on there somewhere if they look. Stepuptolife.com, super simple. Stepuptolife.com is our ministry website. There's a lot of helpful resources there for you. And yeah, my personal one, I've done some coaching and stuff. So I'm mostly just consulting now. So if somebody wants to sit down and plan their season, a strategic look at their season, or they want to frame up a month's training, they got this race as their A race. What do I need to do? And I don't sit down and give somebody, when you go to the pool, the first 100 yards, I don't get down in the weeds like that. There's plenty of opportunity for that out there if people want that. So I'm more of a big picture, do consultations at this point. But yeah, no, those are the two main websites, lincolnmurdoch.com and stepuptolife.com.
Wonderful. Well, Lincoln, thank you so much for your time. I'll put all of those links in the show notes so that you can reach out to Lincoln through those means. And really appreciate your time, Lincoln. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Andy, for doing it. Keep going. You're doing a great job.
Take care, brother.
All right, you too.